in to this week's YouTube Live. I know we're a little late. I'm really sorry. Had some technical issues with my camera. Hopefully they're resolved. But today you've got me, Ursula Mecabe, and of course, Kerry Baker.
Hello.
So Matt will be back next week. I know you guys miss him, but you know, you got us this week. So let's get started. Mr. Riconia, 323. I submitted a FOIA request for my CMP exam results on April 15th, just 5 days after my April 10th CMP exam. I thought that my CMP exam results would arrive faster than my C file, which is why I requested the exam results and not the entire C file. Question: will submitting a FOIA request today for a copy of my C file interfere with the expediency of receiving my already FOIA requested CMP exam? Will they attempt to combine the two FOIA requests? Thanks for all you do. You are awesome. You are awesome too. So if you submit a FOIA request for your C file, it shouldn't change the fact that you have a FOIA request out for your CMP exam. But keep in mind that if you request your C file after you've requested that CMP exam is going to be in the claims file, or should be. And for those of you that don't know what a claims file is or a C file, it's everything and anything like VA has against your claim for your claims. So if you've ever received education benefits or filed claims, VA will get your service records, service medical records, and keep track of any of the claims that you filed, any documents that they send to you, and of course, CMP exams and medical records. Kerry, do you have anything?
No, not really. No, I don't. One shouldn't affect the other, and they go under different end products, just like most things in VA. And I wouldn't hold your I wouldn't hold your breath on getting it very fast, but you know, sometimes they go faster than others. It's hard to know with a FOIA request like that.
Yeah, and if you have an advocate, you could ask your advocate to get that for you if they have access as well. You also might be quicker if you called. Couldn't you call? Isn't there a number you can call to request it? You call VA and
you can try the toll-free number. Yeah, used to when these were done at the VA, you could just go in and get a copy from the VA medical center, like you get a copy of your VA medical records. The problem is these contractors don't do it like that. They just upload them directly to BBMS, and since the VA doesn't give veterans access to BBMS, that's sort of the problem there.
Savoy went for a CMP exam April 26th. They did a lot of exams, got to see some of them, was not favorable. The ones I saw from the nurse still are more. Need to get a real exam. Should I just wait until results before I do something? Definitely not qualified from my point of view. Frustrating, just waiting to get denied. Kerry, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, there's no one answer to that question. It depends on it depends on a lot of things. Most of these examiners today, the results are just terrible. We deal with it every single day. Can you get one from if you can download one of the online DBQs and take it to your own doctor and they can fill it out, you probably will get a better result than that. There's no guarantee VA will look at it, but it gives you something in the record for appellate purposes, and it will certainly make a difference down the road. As far as whether you got more coming or not, we would have no way of telling. But yeah, those things are just terrible. And, who knows? It may be something that VA has to service connect based on your service, depending on what claim you filed. And sometimes a bad exam doesn't necessarily get you a denial. It's just very case specific. Sometimes a good exam still gets you a denial. So anytime you can get one from your own provider, especially if you've seen the ones given by the contractors, then that's not a bad idea at all. And I wouldn't wait because, it might take you a little a little while to get that set up. So I would probably start working on it. It's not going to hurt anything to do it. If you get it done faster, then go ahead and submit it if they haven't made a decision. If they have, then you can submit it with a 0995 for a supplemental claim. So, and if you submit it before they've made a decision and they just use the bad one, well, then you've got reason to go HLR to the higher level review and try to have them look at it. So.
Yeah, and when it comes to the qualifications of the examiner, there are some exams that require specific types of qualifications and doctors to look at. So things like mental health, audiology, TBI, those require very specific doctors to diagnose and to do those DBQs. I see a lot of CMPs that come from nurse practitioners, and they are somewhat qualified to do that as long as that's kind of what they do. But definitely look at the credentials of the examiners. So if you have, a podiatrist or an ophthalmologist looking at your Parkinson's disease, like that's not really going to cut it. And you can make the argument like, hey, this person wasn't qualified. And I'd like to see a different examiner. So, but just because they're a nurse practitioner doesn't mean that they're not qualified. They are equally as qualified for some conditions than others. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Hey, Kerry, are you ever going to use that fishing rod? Looks like the price tag is still on it.
Okay, look, I see no fishing rod behind me. There used to be a long time ago a fishing rod behind me, and yes, that actually got used a while back.
What's back there with the red tag on it?
Oh, so that pole is part of the bookshelf. That's pole is built into the bookshelf. The little red tag is just. I was a few years back. I was on the Jon Stewart show. The problem with Jon Stewart when we were advocating for burn pits to try to get the PACT Act passed, and so his first show at that time, I was on Apple TV, was on the burn pits, and I had spent a couple of months educating his staff on the ins and outs of VA, and they invited me onto the show along with some other folks, and so that's the pass. Kentucky, jarhead hill jack like myself doesn't get a chance to go to the Jon Stewart show very much. So I hung the pass there, and I've just never moved it. That's all.
Larry, I just received a favorable decision letter for sleep apnea, but only because of the VA's doctor's positive comments from my CMP exam. I had submitted a DBQ and nexus letter from my personal doctor, but apparently they were invalid. The decision letter stated you submitted a private examination and medical opinion. However, it was insufficient for rating purposes because the provider did not review the C file, which is required for medical opinions. For future filings, what is a C file and why is it necessary for my PCP's opinion? Thank you. So
Yeah.
There's a couple of things here. I mean, I'm glad that you got service connected. I think that that's terrific. And VA likes to discredit private DBQs sent in by your provider by saying, oh, they didn't review the C file. But if someone is your medical provider and can provide a link between something and something, they don't necessarily have to review the claims file. It helps if they do. But to answer and I'll let Kerry kind of expand on that, but to answer your question about what is a C file, like I said on the very first one, a claims file, which we call the C file, is everything and anything that VA has in regards to your disability claims or other benefits such as education, vocational rehab, things like that. So when you file a claim, VA is going to start developing for things like service records, service medical records, any VAMC records that you might have that might be necessary. They're going to send out letters to you saying we need to get this information or this is what we're doing. And that's also going to be contained in the C file. And so it's really a good thing to look at if you're trying to figure out. I know for me, I love looking at the claims files because it tells so much about claims and you can see where things are. But that's what the claims file is, everything that VA has on your claims.
So, yeah, there's potentially a lot to that. At the end of the day, this first line raters, you are not going to be able to convince them that a review of the claims file is an absolute necessity in order to make a medical opinion adequate for rating purposes. But the truth of the matter is there's case law, and these guys aren't going to know it, that says basically only if the claims file contains something that an examiner must review in order to come to an opinion on something. There's lots of situations where an opinion or an exam from someone that didn't review the claims file is still just as valid as anything else. Now, if it's a service connection claim and they have to review something from your service medical records, and that's in the claims file and only in the claims file, then yeah, VA is going to want to see that doctor reviewed those service medical records in order to come to that opinion. But if you're trying for an increased rating or service connection from one disability to another, and there's nothing in the claims file that's pertinent, that requires review, that's going to help that examiner answer that question, then there's case law that says no, that they can't discount that medical opinion just because the examiner didn't review the case law. And don't ask me what that case law is off the top of my head. I'd have to research it, but I know it exists. And so, but we see that, that's par for the course. That's something that I would expect any of them to say in any circumstance on a medical opinion like that. But it does not mean you're not going to win your appeal.
CG Stone, I am currently at 93%. I was recently rated at 10% for vertigo. I think I should have been rated at 30. Can I do a higher level review with conference to explain why? Yes, you can, so long as you're within the 1 year from the date you got the decision. And it seems like you were. That's a perfect time to do a higher level review and ask for a conference, I think. Angel Marrero, I'm 90% static and submitted a new increased claim with all the bells and whistles. Now, after 4 months, I called VA for an update and they stated that my claim is ready for a decision without a CMP requested or scheduled. Should I get concerned?
That's too difficult to know. Here's what I would say. The short end of it is, if they deny it, I'd go to an HLR and argue duty to assist era, that they denied your claim, which is an increase, which they have a duty to assist you in that claim, and they did not assist you by getting an examination. And that's a pretty clear-cut duty to assist era. If, however, there's medical records in there that answer any question they might need in order to provide the increase, then they might not need the examination. So it can really be both ways there.
And are there any updates on changes to mental health ratings in 2024? If you think your rating could be increased, have an intent to file, or would that be grandfathered adjustment? I don't know of the updates. I know they talked about possibly changing the way mental health ratings were done. I'm not sure if and when they're going to be implemented, but either way, in any situation, when VA changes the ratings of a disability, whether it's mental health, gastrointestinal, it doesn't matter. They have to give you the rating that is most favorable to you if your claim was pending at the time of the adjustment. or the change in the regulation. So Kerry, do you know anything about when they're looking at doing that, or if they've even decided that they're going to do it?
I believe they've decided, from everything I understand, they've decided they intend to do it, but there's no way of knowing whether, one, if they're gonna stick to that, and two, if they do, whether it would come out in 2024 or not. There's just no way of knowing. They're not going to announce when it's going to come out until it comes out. I would simply not bank on it. And if it does come out, that doesn't mean you need to go and file an increased rating claim just because there's new criteria. Because you want to make sure the new criteria is actually favorable and not unfavorable. You could get yourself into they're not going to reduce you based on new criteria. But if you go file a new claim and that claim starts after that new reg is final, and then that new reg is the only thing they're going to consider, and it's not as favorable for you, well, could potentially put yourself in some danger there. It shouldn't, since it was rated under the old, but I mean, this is VA we're talking about.
I've seen them do that. Yeah, I mean, I remember when they made changes, vets would go in and they would schedule exams and use the new criteria that was less favorable. And we were fighting proposed reductions on those and having to argue that the old regulation is the one that is more favorable and they need to use it. And it's extra work for you. It's a headache. But they do have to go by the regulation that's most favorable. We change it because they change the regs.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, with everything going on in VA right now, personally, I would be surprised if it came out this year. But I mean, I've been surprised before, so but I wouldn't bank on it.
Dr. Smith, thanks for all that you do. Will getting a pacemaker increase my 30% for heart disease?
No. First, the under the old criteria, I'd have to look up the new criteria, but under the old criteria, a pacemaker warrants a minimum of 30%. That doesn't mean you might still qualify for an increase based on other criteria, but if you don't meet those criteria, you would get a 30% for a pacemaker. Now, that's not the same thing as a defibrillator. That could be more. That could be 100%. But they have changed the cardiovascular rating schedule. They did that in 2021 or 2022, I think. And it's mostly now on meds. For example, used to you could get 100% for chronic congestive heart failure. You can't get that 100% for that anymore unless the meds support the 100%. I don't like the new criteria, but that would keep you at the 30% if all other things were equal.
Yeah. I was recently denied sleep apnea. I did not have an in-person CMP and VA contracted an IMO. My sleep apnea can be tied to my rhinitis, sinusitis, and PTSD, and I have since acquired my own IMO to support this and have additional buddy statements. Is this a good course of action for continuing with my supplemental claim, considering the VA's history of denying sleep apnea? Thanks. Yes. The medical opinion, Kerry and I have said this before, VA does not like to service connect sleep apnea. They find every reason to not do it. But if you have an IMO that's linking it to those conditions and buddy statements, definitely file with a supplemental claim. And then if it's denied at that point, after you've got all of that in, you may want to just take it to the board and argue the evidence that you have, because the regional office may not budge on this.
Or you could take it to the board now if you wanted to in the evidence lane.
I would take it to the board either way. Probably what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not in a hurry, especially, I mean, the board grants a lot more of those than the regional office does.
Clarence Milia, okay. November 1st, 2023, the VA opened up my claim REF for leukemia. November 2023. I went to evidence and gathering under an ACE exam. I've heard nothing since. Is it still open? Should I let it be? The leukemia is still under treatment and controlled by medication. I have been 100% since March of 2022. This will be my second required routine exam. Go back to the first part of that. That didn't compute with me completely.
Yeah, I see what that's saying. They had an ACE exam.
So an ACE exam, for those of you that don't know, when VA requests an exam, they can either make it be an in-person exam or an ACE exam, which is essentially a record review exam where you're not required, the veteran isn't required to go in. The provider can just look at the record and make a determination. So most of the time when they send those exam requests off to the contract examiners, I'm finding that they are requesting in-person exams anyways, but they don't necessarily have to. So that's why you may not have heard anything, because they may have sent it off for just a record review and they're not requiring you to go in. But you can definitely call the regional or call VA and see if it's still pending. Just kind of say, hey, what's going on with my decision? Because at this point, we're looking at 6 or 7 months. You should have a decision or should be getting one very, very soon. That's a long time. I would reach out and make sure that VA is still working on it.
Yeah, and also because obviously you're 100%. So, you really have nothing to worry about unless you get a proposal to reduce in the mail. But if you do, then I would take issue with an ACE exam because there are a lot of reasons they can't reduce on an exam that's less full and complete than that which benefits were established on. So an ACE exam right off the bat should not support a reduction. And if they didn't talk to you, again, if they try to reduce, then they didn't discern from you the symptoms that you experience. And that's a big thing in rating criteria for leukemia now, because it's not an automatic 100% just because it's active. If it's completely asymptomatic, they could reduce that. If it's not asymptomatic, they should not be reducing it. So just some things to know for good of the order, sort of. But yeah, I agree with Ursula. It wouldn't hurt to call them and find out where it's at.
I just received my decision letter for TBI and diabetes and was denied for both. The VA conceded I have a diagnosis for both, and they mentioned Tara and was still denied both claims. They said they looked at my personal service records and they didn't. I found a lot of Tara in my personal service records. So what's next? The VA Court of Appeals, and they overlooked my doctor opinion. So we're about to get Kerry started on the Tara. So they were both, without knowing exactly why they were denied. A Tara opinion is, to find out your toxic exposures in the military. The Tara memos are just absolute garbage for the most part, and a lot of times don't even list all the things that you were potentially exposed to in service. The TBI, I'm not sure how a TBI would be related to exposures. So, you'd have to know what that in-service event was that caused the TBI. But one thing in this, if you filed a supplemental claim, maybe just go higher level review, and have someone else take a look at it. Because the higher level review decision makers are typically a little more experienced. They know a little bit more. They're going to give you a better decision than those first line raters anyways. So I would definitely start there. You can't take this to the Court of Appeals yet because unless it's been to the board and been denied. So I would just start with a higher level review and see what they come up with in this case. And I don't know enough about your facts to give you any better advice. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I probably don't actually have a whole lot to add to that. I won't get on a soapbox on the terror process. It is garbage. It's complete garbage. But you said you looked in your record and found a lot of terror. That, I'd be curious exactly what do you mean by that? Because typically someone's record doesn't list out exposures. If they're on some kind of surveillance program, like an asbestos exposure surveillance program or something like that, where they know you've been exposed to something, that might be in your records. If, on the other hand, say you're an Iraq or Afghanistan vet or a Gulf War vet, well, then certain exposures are conceded, but that doesn't mean they put them on the terror accurately, because they usually don't. So there's a lot of it depends there. We just can't answer, but certainly, yeah, don't try going to the court, because if this is not a board denial, you can't go to the court. The court only has jurisdiction on board denials, Board of Veterans Appeals, that is. So yeah, I agree with Ursula. Go to the HLR, especially if you got your own opinion and they didn't address it, which is not uncommon. Don't think you're the only one out there. We submit opinions a lot, and the supplemental claim team doesn't address them, which is frustrating. It's extremely frustrating, but it happens all the time. So.
I'm currently 100% permanent and total combined thanks to Helen Ponton's Info Assist. Yay, that's such good news. Still have pending cardiac issues being decided. Had 3 CMP exams for cardiac. First rated at 30. Service Connect appeal submitted as was underrated with examiner using 4-year-old medical records, MET score of 7. Second CMP used current medical records and properly rated METs 1 to 3. However, VA then scheduled a third exam right away, which rated me 3.1 to the 5 METs. Examiner was biased.
Stop that 100% rating, whatever we do. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Examiner was biased during this exam and she only gave 100% opinions of vet symptomatic as complete rest. This is METs 1 and VA allows for up to 100% up to METs. Is this 4 of 53 or 4 of 5? Okay. VA made a decision of 60% with wrong effective date, filed higher level review for effective date. Although higher level review corrected all of the other 10 claim effective date errors, higher level review couldn't make cardiac decision due to error and difference of medical opinions and triggered a, supplemental claim due to the cardiac 3 CMP exam, all with different results. Question: was there a violation of benefit of the doubt when VA did not accept METs 1 to 3? Let's answer these questions one at a time. So I would say no. Kind of, but not really. I think it's more of a developing to deny issue. If they had something that was 100% and your METs were 1 to 3, and that is consistent with your medical record. I don't know why they got that third exam, just to kind of bump you down. Kerry?
It could be a lot of reasons. There could be something in there that and I'm just going to throw some hypotheticals out. We see this a lot. you've got multiple disabilities, obviously. Maybe the examiner didn't address what's causing the METs of 1 to 3. In other words, maybe they didn't answer. There's a question on the DBQ that asks if the METs is due solely to the heart condition, or is it a combination of other conditions? If they don't answer that, then they might have to send that back. And let's say the doctor looks at it and goes, "Oh, well, no, it's not solely due to the heart condition because the guy's got a lung condition and Parkinson's disease, and but the METs that would be due to the heart is just 3 to 3.1 to 5, and that would get you a 60% rating for the heart." Obviously, we have no way of knowing if that's what happened, but we see that a lot. And don't think for a second that some people don't send it back. They realize, "Oh, I'm gonna have to grant 100% here. I better send it back." It's bullshit. We see it a lot. Could that have happened? Sure. Now, usually you said you already rated 100%, so usually they wouldn't do that because it would just give you SMCS. But it's difficult to know. But when they have 3 different ones like that, and the HLR looks at it, I'm not surprised at all that the HLR sent it back to get reconciliation of those 3 different examination results. So I think that's rather common there. It's not really a violation of the benefit of the doubt rule. I mean, that's because at what point do we apply it's very subjective. When you're applying the benefit of the doubt, I wouldn't go into that level of detail with it if I were you. You're just going to get your head wrapped in an axle and upset yourself.
Now, really just apply, like it's more applicable for service connection where there's some gray area, and TDIU and things like that, more than like in a rating, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when there's specific criteria in the rating schedule, they're going to want to see that. But I will tell you though, just because of this goes for everybody with a heart condition. VA uses METs now almost primarily to rate heart conditions. All right, and so you want to make sure you look at those exam results. If they say your METs are 7 to 10. But you can't walk across the room without getting winded, then your METs probably aren't 7 to 10. Okay, especially when they do interview-based METs. So that leaves some subjectivity there. And so, I don't trust these examiners. Sure, a lot mean the best, but some don't. And so you want to make sure the METs they assign is consistent with your abilities. You can go out and push a mower in your front yard and mow your whole yard. You don't have a METs of 1 to 3. Okay. If you get winded by eating, which a heart condition you can call it, you should have a METs of 1 to 3. If you get winded by climbing up 1 flight of steps at a slow pace, you might have a METs of 3 to 5. You can Google that. You can figure out, at what levels of exertion, once you get winded, chest pain, dizzy, all that kind of stuff, that should play a role in the decision to assign a certain number of METs. So there's some subjectivity there. Lay statements. You can submit lay statements and possibly prevail on some issues like that. But go ahead, Ursula.
You remember that client we had that we actually had stress tests, like actual physical stress tests that gave METs of 1 to 3, and then they went into a C&P exam and they were given like 3 to 5 METs, and like based on an interview, and it's like you can't actually, like, why are you doing interview based and giving a higher METs level on an interview base when literally 6 months ago there was an actual test done, diagnostic test, and they still tried to give the lower one. So
yeah,
I'll use a lot of lay statements when it comes to that kind of stuff because it just is what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Question 2, why did the higher level review not decide on effective date, but instead reviewed entire cardiac file? So there could be a couple of reasons for this. Let's say you only appealed the effective date of the heart and not the rating of the heart into the higher level review lane. Where my brain goes with this is they may be trying to figure out at what level your heart increased or decreased. So if your claim goes all the way back to 2016, and at first your heart wasn't as bad and now it is worse, they could be trying to get an exam to figure out when you were entitled to a higher rating for your heart. That might be one reason why they're sending it back is to kind of stage the ratings. I don't know if that's what happened though. And either way, that's going to be the effective date would be wrong on that because they would probably just take it from the date of the exam. But that could be one reason why they reviewed the entire cardiac file is for ratings. But they shouldn't do that. They should just set the effective date. Anyways, Kerry, is there something that you?
No, I don't. With that more info, I don't know what else I can add to that.
Question 3. Go back, Nate. Please explain difference of opinion from higher level review and my options.
There's not really. The difference of opinion is being done by the higher level review.
Yeah. So what they're doing is they're sending it back. So now you're out of the higher level review lane and you've been kicked into the supplemental claim lane because they're going to do more development. They're going to, take a look at those CMP exams, try to reconcile and all of that. So your options now are the same options that you would have if you filed into the supplemental claim lane. So you can submit statements, evidence, medical records, all of that stuff for review. So that's now what your option is. Submit stuff, wait for a decision, and at that point, you are open to all of your appeal options. You can go supplemental, you can go higher level review, you can go to the board. So the world is your oyster at that point.
Yeah. So difference of opinion is just DOROs, HLR reviewers. They have difference of opinion authority. All right, and they can look at something and go, well, there might not be a law violated, but my opinion is different than that rater's, and therefore I'm going to send it back because I have a difference of opinion than what was done previously. They get a de novo review. They can do that, and they're not supposed to do it in the negative light. In other words, to hurt the case. They're only supposed to use that authority to help the case. But that's all it is. It's just them using their authority to go do something hopefully better and more thorough in the case.
Denied.
You were silent there for about 10 seconds.
Oh, am I back?
No, you're back now.
Okay. All right. Let's start this one over then. J Monk, I had a lower back strain, higher level review, denied. What can I do next? What do I need to convey the message that I have been aggravated by this injury while in service? I'm gonna let you take this one, Kerry.
Man, there's a lot to that, even though it's so simple. It seems like a simple question. So what do I need to do to convey the message that I have been aggravated by this injury while in service? Now, the way you write that, I'm a little confused, but I'm going to interpret it that you had a back injury and before you went into service, something happened in service and you aggravated that injury while in military service. Hopefully I'm interpreting that right. If that's the case, it can get rather deep, all right, because one was your back injury noted on enlistment. If it was not noted on enlistment, you are presumed in sound condition, and they cannot, short of clear and unmistakable evidence, come back and say it pre-existed service, even sometimes if you tell them so. If it was noted at entrance, all right, then you don't get that presumption of soundness. There is a presumption of aggravation, but you have a burden there to show before that presumption kicks in. A lot of people get this wrong. So let's just say the back condition was noted at entrance. You had a muscle strain playing football in high school, but you were asymptomatic going into service, and something happened. You lifted something heavy, and instantly something happened to your back. You had to go to medical to get treated, or you fell, or you got an actual injury that you had to get documented and while in service. So that documentation there is potential evidence of aggravation in service. Okay. Only then potentially does the presumption of aggravation kick in. And I say potentially because if it's shown that whatever that aggravation was is the natural course of that disease process, which would be difficult in a back situation, then they don't have to presume service aggravated it. All right, so you're dealing with a lot of moving parts there. So was it noted on entry? If not, and they try to say that it existed prior to service, well, now you got them because they violated the presumption of soundness. And here's the thing: in order to rebut the presumption of soundness, it's a two-pronged test. All right, they have to show that by clear and unmistakable evidence, which is undebatable evidence, that the condition did indeed exist prior to service, and that service did not aggravate it. So they have a double prong test that they have to overcome. If they can't overcome both of those prongs, you win your case. Okay. But again, if it's noted, it's a whole somewhat different process. If it's noted and you went through service and nothing happened and your treatment records are clean, they don't show an increase in that back disability that was noted in service, then you don't have anything to kick in that presumption that it was aggravated. Then the burden falls on you to show that that was aggravated. And that's where it becomes an uphill battle. So I know I said a mouthful there, but it's, where yours falls into that. Obviously, I have no way of knowing, but that's a difficult thing for a layman, meaning most of you folks are laymen when it comes to VA law. It's a difficult thing for a layman to argue on their behalf because it can get into the weeds legally, and these first line raters are not going to get it.
One thing that I thought about while you were talking is just something that I see a lot in general when it comes to veterans with orthopedic conditions, low back conditions, and things like that. Even if you went in without any kind of orthopedic issue and then you hurt yourself, you get a back strain in service from PT or whatever it might be, a lot of the times the denials that I see are also just the continuity of symptoms. So, at 20 years old, 24, 25, 30, however old you are when you get out of the service, you may not have symptoms of that back strain that you had in service, but as your body gets older, even with nothing else happening, that back strain that you have now at 50 could have had its onset in service from all of that physical activity. And so if that's the case in what's going on with you with your orthopedic conditions, it's really important to line out, like, this happened to me in service. This is the same condition. Nothing else happened to me between now and then that could have caused this. And had I not had that injury, I wouldn't have this one. And so that's something to think about as well, is just making sure that if you do have the service records that document that injury, letting them know, like, it's the same. You might need a medical nexus. We've even seen it where, like, someone had a back strain and then there was another event that happened and then the back was very, very bad, and kind of just saying, that back strain, this condition here wouldn't be as bad had that back strain in service not happened. And so keep that in mind for those of you that are dealing with orthopedic conditions that just keep getting denied because they're saying it's not the same condition as what happened in service.
Yeah, and Ursula, you said something that made me think, just not to scare anybody out there, but stuff that I went over, as complicated as that is or can be, throw in a DBQ examiner who offers an opinion that's completely off the mark, that doesn't know what they're doing, that doesn't know a thing about these presumptions. And now you've got a monkey wrench into the gears that it makes it even worse, unfortunately. And so, yeah, you might need to get somebody that really knows what they're doing and help you out there. You're quiet again, Ursula.
My back?
There, now you're back. So,
Yeah.
it's a lag or something.
I don't know. I had all kinds of technical issues before coming on, and I'm just happy I'm here, All right, from email, I have an existing rating for neuritis of my left hand that I've had since I was 11 years ago. My right hand is the same issue, and I suffer from neck strain often. I'm getting a nerve conduction test done. Would I be able to file neck strain and right hand as secondary to my left hand? Or does a neck strain narrowing of the nerves have to have a nexus and be a primary claim? Can you go back, Nate? It depends on what's causing the issues in your hands. If your left and right hand are caused from the neck strain, then yes, you would want to file for those secondary to the neck strain. But if the nerve issues are something different, I don't know how nerves in this hand will cause issues to nerves in this hand. I don't see. I don't know how that would work. I really can't answer that without knowing more about the medical records and what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think I can either, but I can say just based on the nomenclature, neuritis is inflammation of a nerve, all right, whereas neuralgia is nerve pain, not the same thing. So if you have true inflammation of a nerve in your hand, I would, like Ursula said, ask, well, what's causing that inflammation? Is there a disease process causing neuritis? And if so, then you could have it in both hands. Because of the underlying disease process, you could even have it in your neck or any other nerve in your body. So that's one thing to look at. I don't know if that's kind of what you mean by this. Now, a cervical problem in your neck will absolutely, in some cases, cause neuralgia, radiculopathy type pain in your upper extremities. So if, they could very easily be two separate things. You can always file a claim. If you want to file a claim for the cervical spine, you can always file the claim on 2 different bases or 5 different bases, that it's secondary to or aggravated by the neuritis in that you're already service connected for, and or directly related to service through whatever means. So you don't have to limit it to one thing. So I would raise both issues if you're going to file the claim. You're quiet again. Yeah, you're still quiet this time. I'll read it. This is from JD Min 4. Do you recall 38 CFR or court cases saying a disease can be service connected if symptoms shown in service but not diagnosed and continue to manifest post discharge? STR showed 22 months of hypertension. Okay, so you're basically talking about 3.38 CFR 3.303, direct service connection. All right, something began in service. All right, manifested in service doesn't necessarily mean you had a diagnosis, and that continued on until you got the diagnosis. That's so that's just basic 3.303 direct service connection there. That doesn't mean VA is going to understand it as such, but that's at the end of the day, that's what that is. Yeah, you're still quiet. Or
Here.
now you go.
I just have to keep talking the whole time, and then I'll just
I think
stay.
I think you have to keep talking, or you just like.
Okay. All right, next one. Lonnie Brinson. I'm client. We have moved from the hearing lane to evidence lane at BVA. Will my appeal move a little faster? Also, it said I have 90 days to submit new evidence. Can I submit the evidence, or you guys need to submit it? The evidence is an intent to file, which I believe wasn't added to the information you guys sent to BVA. So can you go back to the first one?
Okay.
First, yeah, go ahead.
First, we can't discuss a client's case over open airways like this. And two, an intent to file is not something you do at, generally speaking, an intent to file is not something you do at the board. You can't, that's not new evidence. Filing an intent to file, that's a new claim back at the local level. But from what I gather of your message, you're a client, and we just can't discuss a client's personal information over the airways like this.
Yeah, but over broadly, I would talk to your attorney or case manager and find out, from them what evidence needs to be submitted or how they want to handle that. So definitely reach out to your advocate and go from there, or your attorney. Hirsch 1. I have a current car for, I'm not even going to try to say that because I'll mess it up, a genetic blood disorder. Not on entry physical, but manifested as anemia in service. Over the years, it's caused a number of complications, causing me to have phlebotomies to control it. I requested my C-file in January 23 and received it this week. Wow, that's fast. Just kidding.
That sounds actually normal. I hate to say that.
The rating decision shows the denial of service connection. I'm concerned they might rate it low. In the event they do, would this then go to the board? Would it be a supplemental, a Q, or what? Thanks for all that you do. So it sounds like they granted it, right? Go back 1 or 2. The denial of service connection. I know we talked about this. Was it last week or the week before? Recently, I remember talking about this and the issues. If you were, I'm lost. Hold on, go back to, so sorry guys. Sorry, everybody. So it's still on appeal right now. You should have been notified of the decision before getting your C-file, but it looks like it's on appeal, correct?
That's what I would, if you filed a car, which is basically a higher level review, and you haven't got a decision yet, then I would say it should be on appeal.
Okay. If it's actually a genetic blood disorder, or you may have trouble, but if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, genetic conditions manifesting because of other things, whether it be stress or exposures or toxins or something like that. So it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to get it service connected. So go to the next one. So the denial of service connection, I'm assuming, is from, I don't know if the denial was from the car or if the denial was the previous one before you filed the car. So that's not, I think that's what's tripping me up. Go to the next one. But rating it low, it's not service connected yet. Yeah, I'm a little confused. Carrie, maybe you can figure that out.
Okay, so I'm going to take a stab here. So I think you're jumping the gun when you say they might rate it low. Get it service connected first. All right, you can't argue what the rating is if they don't grant service connection. If they grant service connection and the rating's low, no, that's not a CUE. You would want to appeal that directly, not on the basis of CUE. It doesn't mean it's not accurate. It could be very inaccurate, but rating, one rater might rate it one way, another one might rate it another way. How somebody weighs the evidence on something like that is not a CUE. Would it go to the board or be a supplemental? That's up to you. It depends on where you want to take it. But again, it has to be service connected before you go down those paths. So I wouldn't look that far ahead. I would do what you can to make sure it gets service connected, assuming that it's not right now. You can always look up the disease in the rating schedule if it's in there. I don't know what anemia is. I don't know if that particular one is. And try to front load your own knowledge of the situation on what it should be if they service connected. But I would worry about the service connection first. Don't try appealing it with a CUE if they do grant it and underrate it. Either go supplemental, go higher level review, or go straight to the board. You have those options, and that is up to you.
It's granted TDIU permanent and total. The VA made 2 mistakes that I believe would be corrected with a higher level review, which would qualify me for SMCS. Does a higher level review open me up to the possibility to lose what was just awarded? I mean, anytime you file something, what am I back?
You're only halfway back. I couldn't really understand you. So let me read it. So I was just granted TDIU, P&T. The VA made 2 mistakes that I believe would be corrected with an HLR, which would qualify me for SMCS. Does an HLR open me up to the possibility to lose what I was just awarded? Generally, no. Okay, unless they ruled that the grant was a clear and unmistakable error, which again, that's highly unlikely. So no, I don't think that would do that. As far as whether it would qualify for SMCS, there's just not enough information there, to decide that. The only way it would qualify, you have to be entitled to TDIU based on a single disability. If it's more than one, you're not going to get SMCS. If it's based on a single disability and you have additional disabilities that combine up to 60 or more, that's when you would get SMCS. So beyond that, I couldn't answer anything else because there's just not enough info. But it should not put you in danger of losing what you got. No one can promise that, but that's heavy lifting trying to prove an error because somebody granted a benefit and somebody else trying to say it's an error. They're supposed to kind of have restrictions on that, doing that kind of thing at the HLR phase. They're not supposed to just go back and reweigh everything in the negative light. So you've got some protections there. Yeah, sure.
One question, and then we're done. And you take it.
Now you're back, but I'll read it. But it's from Alan. If you file a claim and click new by mistake instead of secondary, will your claim be denied? Okay, first, I don't know what you mean by, I guess you're filing it electronically. So I don't know, but I mean, it's just going to be considered how you file it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be denied. Um, so I'm not sure what you're getting at there. You could always send VA a memo, a letter saying, look, I filed a claim. I think I may have clicked on this button by mistake. Here is what I meant by my claim. That way, if they do see it and they have some bit of confusion or whatever, you clarified the situation before they've made the decision, and you should be okay with that. Ursula is saying bye. All right, we will maybe be back next week, or Matt might be back. We just don't know that yet. But thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys later.